just to give us a couple extra inches. Again, always important to use barn wood if you can find it. So we'll start pulling some of this off, and then we'll start pulling off some clips. And this guy. We're going to wipe this down before we put it back on. Found some rubbish under there. Somebody's had some McDonald's, it looks like. In this case, it wasn't me. We don't need to disconnect these wires. You can if you want to, but we'll just move it out of the way. Alright, we got more plastic. We're going to pop these clips off. She's almost 30 years old, so take it easy on her. I'm going to move the gear shift all the way back to give us a little more space while we're messing around in there. So you don't need to start the car, just move that key. And then that'll give us a little more space to spin that around. We're not taking off, we're just going to leave everything connected here. And then we'll start pulling off all this trim here so that we can get back behind. I'm going to use this little toolkit for helping pull off trim without breaking anything. Got this off Amazon, and we'll be using, find the piece that works best for you, and you're going to go around all these little edges, just massage them out so you're not putting any extra force on things. Pull off these little knobs. Gentle. See, these got little clips here that are just holding on. And we have a couple of Phillips screws in here. We're just going to need the one that's holding on the plastic clips here, which you can see up in there as well. You don't need to do the ones behind because that's not holding this on. So we have 1 and 2. One, and top left corner, 2. Now you've taken out those 2 screws, bottom right, top left. This here comes out nice and gently. We have a couple of plugs up top. We're just going to pinch those and pull back. Pinch this clip, pull away from you. Little wiggle. Been connected for all these years. Not wanting to move. There we go. That gives us a little extra space to be able to move this out of the way. We don't have to disconnect everything. We have another one in here that is connected to the clock. This guy here, same type of clip. Make sure you remember which one is for the clock. The other 2 are the ones up top, which are easy to see. So we got those wires. We can move. Don't let your light hit you in the head. We can move the piece out of the way now. We're going to leave these bottom ones connected. Don't need to be disconnected. And then we can see our little amp back up in there, and we got our stereo right here. Alright, we're gonna remove these 4 Phillips head, or you can get a nut driver bolts to get this stereo out. And that's our beast of a stereo. You can see on the back all the plugs here. We've got some antenna, AM and FM, got a plug and a plug. You're going to take out these 2 wire harnesses from the back side of the factory amp that was there. Then we're going to get rid of this amp because we won't be using it anymore. We're going to replace it with this Jensen MPR2121. Got it from Crutchfield. It also includes a wire harness here, and it also has a cubby we're going to put in place because it was a doubled in before. This guy down here. We'll get to wiring. Got the remote wire for the amp. I'm going to hook it up to the blue wire for the power antenna, which does the same thing, and then I'm going to crimp this together. I soldered all the other connections together and used some shrink wrap from Harbor Freight. Keeps it nice and thin still. It's not all bulky with your crimps, but I'm going to put 1 crimp because I couldn't take the amp wire inside my house, and I'm going to connect the blue ones. Put these 2 together, and then we'll put them in one side of the crimp. Alright, we'll get this one side in the crimp, and then we will crimp it. Like so, nice and snug. And then we will crimp the other side in here. And we're nice and snug. The only wire it says we're not going to use in this harness is the orange and white one. So everything else should be good to go. And now we also have our amp hooked up. So these are the wires that were on the back side of your factory amp. And this is the harness that came with the Crutchfield kit. So those are going to plug straight in. Like so. And then we have our harness that goes out to the radio. So we're not going to use the DIN sleeve that goes around the outside of the stereo. We're going to remove it. You can use the tools that came with it. Slide them in there. I've never liked them. They're pretty flimsy. They get hung up on stuff. So I know I'm not going to use it. So I'm just going to take a little screwdriver and pry this out a slight bit so I can slip it off. Like that. You do the same to the other side. And then this will just slide off. Careful of these little edges and corners. Don't slide your hand along any of this. It's pretty sharp, like here. So we got the DIN off. And then we'll take off this piece of trim as well. I'm going to slide off this trim around here. So usually there's a place where you can just get started, get a couple of them loose, and then work your way around gently. There's just little clips. Alright, we got that off. And now we have bare naked radio, and we'll get to installing that. So we have our stereo and we have our pocket. They're going to sit something like that. And then we need to take the bracket off of the factory stereo, and we're going to use that to install this. So that's what we're talking about. This bracket here, you can see R for right. That's good, they label it for us. So we'll take off these screws here, and the Crutchfield pack came with a new bag of screws. We could reuse those. We'll see which one we like best. Alright, 4 of those. So that's set just like that. And then we'll line it up with the other radio to see how it looks. Alright, it fits on the pocket very nicely, easily, but then it doesn't line up with the stereo, whether the pocket's on or not. The closest I can get it, I think I need to bend this little tab right here flat to see if we can get it to hook up. See if I can show you what I mean. So this is what it would look like. No screws have been put in. So I basically flattened out this tab from the original bracket because I wasn't plugging in anything. Now we can put some screws in there, screws in here. Alright, we'll take the bracket off the left side, 4 screws. Here's the left side. Again, this little tab right here is causing it from going flush, so I'm going to bend that flat. Just grab a pair of pliers and gently pinch it, rotate it flat. We're just getting it out of the way. I'm going to leave it on there in case I did something wrong, or in case somebody else wants to use this for a different stereo in the future. Alright, flat. Come up here. Again, this on the pocket lines up very easily with the holes. And then we have these 2 holes here. Closest I can get to lining everything up. It's going to sit like that. We have 1, 2, 3 screws we'll put in. The one in the back hits a little screw that's in the stereo, so you have to give it a little extra. It'll get past it. Alright, we have 1, 2, 3 screws we put in. This is the driver's side because it'll flip around like that. They only gave us the larger screws to go into these holes here. This one just kind of sits there. You could put a separate screw in that hole as well, just to make sure it holds in place. Right, so we're not going to end up using this trim piece. It won't go on after we have attached these sides, so we're just going to leave it like that. We're going to need to install this unit, and then the trim piece will plug right over the top of it. We don't slide it through or anything, it's just going to sit like that. So here's what you're going to see from the front. It's going to look like that. Should look pretty good. Found a couple of these little screws that I had saved from taking apart a computer one time. As you can see, they're quite small, but it's going to be enough to go into this little one here. You don't need to do this. Probably it'll just hold there, but this means it won't be coming loose at all when I put this thing in. Alright, we're on there. And we'll do the other side. Okay, we're in there. Brackets attached. Stereo ready to install on the inside. So before you mess around too much, especially if you have this wire you've put in for an amp, make sure you correctly put your harness where you want to put it so you don't have to re-splice in. So our stereo is going through this DIN here. We want to make sure we have it up through there before we hook everything up. So we're not going to use this orange and white dimmer wire. It's the one that Crutchfield said we wouldn't be using. So we're going to tape it up and just leave it floating around back there with the other wires. Alright, we need to get our antenna wire ready to plug in. We have our harness that we spliced together, and if you have a sub, you'll be connecting it to the sub out as well. So now that you've wired it through the correct hole here, make sure you hook up your wiring harness, sub if you have a sub out, your antenna, and then we'll slide it into here and hook up the screws. Pull your wiring harness down so nothing's getting pinched in the back. Make sure these little tabs are in place down here on each side, right below the bolt. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're gonna get this shifter out of the way so we have a bit more room to play around with putting this back together. And we're gonna take our trim piece here. We're gonna put this trim piece back in. Make sure you get all your wires plugged in the back. For instance, that one. And that one. And we have this one that spins sideways here for the clock. That one. 3 of those, and we're plugged in. Okay. We'll line up the trim piece with the, there we are, plugs on the back. Looks pretty good. There's no way that trim is going to fit in there, so Jensen should change their instruction manual, I guess. We had to bend that little tab, so, but it looks pretty good for what it is. Now we're going to put our screws back in here, and we're going to start putting the rest of the stuff back together. A couple of screws here. You don't need to get these overly tight. I think I'm going to finish them off by hand. There we are. We got air conditioner, heater, clickety clack. You got some knob action. Once you found your fourth knob, you can put that one on too. Make sure you got your AC button pushed in. That likes to kind of pop out. There we are. Got all that put back in. Everybody's fitting nice and snug. Radio looks good. Then we can put on all these trim pieces again. Tuck all this back down in there. Then you can put that back in park, get it out of your way. Keep it out of the way so it doesn't make noise. If you need to breathe when you open your door. And then we'll put this last piece back in. Make sure when you're putting it in, there's no pinched wires or anything like that. And we're on. Enjoy. Finished product.